It's Friday, April 3rd, 2026, and just 46 days on May 19th. Every social media platform in America is legally required under the Take It Down Act to have a functional system to remove deepfake sexual imagery from children within 48 hours of a report. And this week, two separate juries, one in New Mexico, one in LA, found Meta and YouTube liable for harming children. The New Mexico verdict, $375 million. The next day in LA, $380 million. And Mark Zuckerberg sat in that LA courtroom himself. And across every school in America, our kids are still on their phones, being shaped by the very platforms that just lost in court. I'm Richard Schreiber, AI strategist, autism advocate, and journalist.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I'm Tom Martin, and I came up in an era when journalism had a mandate codified in law under the Fairness Doctrine to represent both sides of the controversy. That doctrine died in 1987. And in 1990, I moved from Washington to New York to work for CBS Sunday Morning, Charles Perrault. And what I watched over the following decade was a media ecosystem rebuilt not to inform, but to inflame. And the platforms that followed built on the same model: no public trust obligation, no fairness doctrine, no accountability until this week. This is true journalism.
Today, we sit down with someone who has been fighting the battle in classrooms, auditoriums, and school boards for over a decade, long before Congress noticed and long before Mark Zuckerberg had to face a jury. Kim Carr, our special guest, is the co-founder and executive director of Digital for Good and Pound I Can Help. She's trained more than 2.4 million students, parents, and educators across 1,500 schools, partnering with the likes of Google, Snapchat, and Facebook to build digital citizenship programs that actually work. Kim, welcome to True Journalism. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, it's such an honor. Such great to join you two.
Great. Well, tell us a little about yourself, other than the fact you like to play pickleball, go hiking, and watch rom-coms.
All the good stuff. Yeah. So I taught middle school for 13 years, started seeing all the issues that were happening online. And I started just having conversations with them because what I was finding out, when something was going down, they didn't really know what to do. So I just started telling them the steps of what now we call teaching them how to be a digital first responder. They're the first ones to see them. They see something bad go online. And so I started teaching them that. And then it just became a movement because other schools are like, can you teach our students this? Can you teach our students this? Because they were having so many problems. And now started the nonprofit back in 2013. And now here we are in the digital era, for sure, of all the different stuff that's happening on with AI and everything that's happening.
Yeah, and it's so needed. I guess the first question we could take a stab at, and love to get your feedback on, is obviously the two recent decisions against Meta and YouTube in the hundreds of millions of dollars, because you've partnered with organizations like that. And I guess this is a new era of accountability that these landmark decisions have come forth and maybe leading to some more.
Yeah, we've partnered with them, and here's how we partner really is we partner because a lot of times they help us with events that we have with students. They've never really paid us for, I know that's always a big thing that you're getting paid to say nice things about them. No, our concept is it's called Digital for Good because I feel like it's everyone's responsibility to help make digital for good. Yes, the tech companies need to be doing their responsibility, but as users, we also have a responsibility of what we should be doing. And so with these two decisions, I really feel that it doesn't need to be brought to people's attention that these apps are being built for money. They're being built to keep you on their platform, aka the addiction part. That's what they're built for. And so we as people need to start figuring out how can we self-regulate so we don't have the addiction issue and that we don't go that route. So you can compare it really closely to the cigarettes. Back when we found out cigarettes were bad for us, right? And like the laws that had to get changed around that and the lawsuits are happening. It's us starting making laws to not have cigarettes out at restaurants and things like that. That kind of stuff interesting.
Or the Joe Camel ads, which were targeted to children simply because hand-drawn characters and animals tend to be in that respect.
And even the vape pens, they had to change that not that long ago where they couldn't have the cotton candy flavor to have that. And even a lot of them have to now be so many miles away from schools so that they can't sell vape pens that close to schools.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is a lot of interesting, a lot of parallels of us realizing like there wasn't the data of that phones are bad for you. They're bad for our mental health. There is a lot of different things, anxiety, depression, suicides have all increased because of all the
Yes.
type of stuff that's happened on the online.
Do you think these cases are valid because they're specific to sexual content? Do you think it goes beyond that?
Yeah, the sextortion, I mean, that the big one in, like you said, New Mexico, that was all around the sextortion cases. That's billions of dollars. The United States is now becoming one of the number one countries who are getting hit with the sextortion. Billions of dollars of people are paying money. Basically, what's happening is people in these poor areas, especially countries, will reach out to people, pretend like they're using AI to pretend like there's somebody, and then getting them to send them images. And now it's give me $500 or I'm going to share these images with people, right? So that's where that is. And billions of dollars have been spent because they got sucked into the sextortion. And it's super embarrassing. A lot of times they don't read. That's the number we know that's been reported. There's a lot of cases that don't get reported because people are so embarrassed. And that's, again, mental health massively increased on these big cases that people get so embarrassed they don't know what to do and they don't know how to handle it. So that's kind of where we step in, is we try to help people know what the steps are. And hey, you're going to make mistakes on these devices. Like, we're here to support you, to walk you through it, and then hopefully be preventative and make sure it doesn't happen, that we kind of warn people ahead of time that this is what is happening. So just be careful on the signs, knowing what the warning signs are on that end.
Sure. On the mental health aspect, I think that's interesting and important. We've also seen recent lawsuits, parents being charged because their child brings a gun to school or literally shoots someone, which is horrific, of course. And it was interesting in some of the news reports that I saw about these recent cases. I think they've unearthed email messages that spoke about addiction. We know it's addiction and so on. What responsibility do schools and even parents have? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. More states, pretty much a lot of the states across the nation have adopted some kind of a policy where either there are some states that went full, they would call them phone bans, where their phones aren't allowed in their school. They can have devices, like they can have some kind of a computer, usually if it's a one-on-one device, but just getting rid of phones. Or they went the route of every school has to create a new policy around their devices so they can help with the addiction and help with mental health and focus in school. So each school, most states did at least adopt that kind of a policy state by state. So I think that's going to help. The other one, there are some states who are now making a policy to at least have some kind of digital citizenship, digital safety, literacy, wellness, all that is expected to be in the education system. I want to say like Virginia, I think it's 1 hour in middle school each year is what they're expected to do, which is not very much because they use these on a daily basis. So but it's at least a start. That's all I got to say, is that like we have to at least do something. And so I know that's what schools are doing. But yeah, there was a case as well, not maybe 7 or 8 years ago, where it was a parent who pretended to be their child and texted a friend, and a suicide actually ended up happening, where that parent then was liable of what was happening. But she was the one that was doing it, pretending to be her daughter. So
Yeah.
there are more
Like,
cases, that are happening.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. No, you're also in touch with the young people themselves, the students themselves. It's become a predictable cliche, at least in my mind, seeing 80-year-old senators grilling Mark Zuckerberg, tech leader who's
It's like
40 years younger, a little out of touch with it. But how do the young people feel about banning phones in their schools?
It's like taking candy from a baby, right? I think first they're upset, but once you kind of explain them the why and they start understanding it, and you're trying to talk to them like, hey, it's for focus, it is for mental health, it is for that you can actually have respectful conversations with peers, because so much drama was happening during school hours. Like they were taking pictures of their classmates during class and then making fun of them. And now someone finds out about it, it's so hard to study, right? So once you kind of explain the why, the schools who have adapted this now, they actually are like really thankful that they're actually have conversations with their peers, and they're playing games again at lunch, right? Like actual Uno or that kind of stuff. The biggest problem now some of the schools are having is that they're too loud at lunch, which is a good problem to have, right? So
Oh my
there's some really things that are happening, but it is hard because so much stuff, is happening on these devices. Everything, it's their alarm, it's their calendar, it's their way to check in with homework, that they check in with their friends, right? There's so many things it's being used for. And to take some of that away, you have to retrain yourself. And that takes, no adult likes to retrain themselves on anything, let alone asking a teen.
Yeah, I know, Kim, your position is not to specifically go after social media companies. It's really to educate the parents and the students on this is the fact of life, but like anything, Tom and I always bring up with respect to our indulgence in AI, so to speak, that AI is like fire. Fire was a life-changing thing in our lives. It can also burn our houses down. The responsibility falls on the individual, though, to how we use the fire, and perhaps social media is the same way.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think the big one, especially with us working with youth, we've always been youth-driven and youth-centered. So we have over 100 plus interns who work with us and they've been with us since 2013 because they see there's a problem and they know there's a problem. So we even work with the tech companies because for years we've been telling the tech companies, you can't build an app and not have the voice of a youth. Like, why are you building these apps? And you haven't even asked them, like, how could this go wrong? And I think there is a lot of AI tools that are being used and they're like, we don't want that. And so they need to hear from the youth because there are some tools that they're like, no, that's going to cause so many problems. It's really bad for our mental health. Like they're speaking up. And so a lot of the organizations, Snap has one. They have youth councils, Snap, TikTok. They all have youth councils now to be able to hear from the youth, which I think that's super important.
Yeah.
If you're going to be for them, you've got to have them there to have a voice.
And from your perspective, do they take these councils seriously? It's not just going through the motions. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think because they know like that they're impressed, like the youth actually give them really good advice, right? And we understand what you're trying to do. We know you're trying to make money and we know, you know what I mean, that you are a company in your business, but you also need to make sure you're hearing that student voice part. Yes. And I've seen some great stuff come out of it in conversations and real products that upgrades because of what their youth council has told them.
Yeah. We hear a lot of talk about guardrails in the AI space. Being in technology, we hear about AI governance and guardrails. And unfortunately, even in corporate America, there aren't a lot of guardrails around the use of AI, even today. And it's a big problem. So imagine if adults aren't doing it, how important it is for children. I wanted to ask you, Kim, in the world, we know there are several countries, maybe even states in America that have imposed like prohibition of Facebook or Instagram accounts prior to 16 years of age. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Is that a knee-jerk reaction? Is that really helpful? Or is it just another way of deferring the real issue, which is what Tom and I are about, that we as individuals have a responsibility to pursue the facts and the truth in news, not just simply listen to what's consistent with our beliefs and viewpoints?
Yeah. So I think there's always a question about the age because they don't have, it's the information sharing, right? So you want to be really careful on that piece. So Roblox, for example, they're doing they're actually taking a picture of the youth and in their faces to see if AI can read if they're the right age. I will be honest with you, because it is so beta tested. I was just with a huge school district down in Southern California and a whole bunch of fourth graders. Oh yeah, I read my face as an 18-year-old. So it is so beta tested, it's not getting the right age. Yeah. But I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to get it that they're only talking to people of their age in chat sections so that they can still have that. So 8 to 10-year-olds would only be talking together. But could a predator still get in? Of course. So that's why you still got to train 8-year-olds. This might not be another 8-year-old in here. Like, now. So I think it's the education part of it on that end, to be able to have a conversation about the age. And that they know, I don't know, we were also trained stranger dangers. Don't take candy from strangers. Where now this generation is definitely like, your friends, your closest friends might be online. Like that's the way that they connect with people who have something interesting, of that they have some common interest. And they're finding their community online, which I think that's super cool. And I think that's what the tech companies are trying to push back on, is, hey, there's also a space where people can find that area.
Yeah, I always find encouragement. Maybe I'm generalizing and I don't have any empirical data to back this up, but I always find it encouraging that the younger generation has compassion. They don't like to see discrimination by nationality or LGBTQ or something like that. So if they understand the impact that misuse of technology can have. Maybe they really get on board. Like you said, no one likes to have their candy taken away. I always am impressed with the awareness of the younger generation, so to speak.
Yeah. And
The-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to interject. A lot of kids I've noticed in response to some of the concerns over Facebook and Instagram and some of the other platforms migrate to Discord. And I wanted to get your particular thoughts on that. Is that in truth the safer place? Because it seems to be. I guess cautionary tale, you should always still understand the fundamentals regardless of where you are, correct?
Yeah, every platform is meant like they never built it to be like this bad space. And so this going back to the sextortion pieces, that was what's happening is they would go on, let's say, Roblox, or they would go to Instagram, and they would start a conversation there, and then they would get them to go over to Discord to continue the conversation, and that's where they get the information from. So every platform can be used in a bad way. I'll be honest with you, Snapchat is actually everyone always talks badly about Snap and how unsafe it is because it goes away. That's only the main people who are saying that is the parents because the parents can't. It's harder to
Yeah.
monitor a kid, right? Because it does go away. But technically, it's the safest platform for users because you have so much control over who gets
Right.
to see your snaps and how long you want them to see it for. And like you have that control, you as a user have that control. But yeah, it is one of those ones that's hard because you can't monitor it. You don't know. Someone could take a screen. It'll tell you if someone took a screenshot, but someone can take a screenshot over the phone, right? So there's still a lot of things out there. So no matter what platform you're on, like it can be unsafe. That's why you as a user needs to be trained on how to use it and what to do if something does go wrong. And that's what we call it being a digital first responder. We need people's help on that's what Meta, if you guys saw, like they got rid of their safety councils because they're like, no, it should be the community's job to call each other out if somebody's being rude and inappropriate and cruel. And easy the community who help report and respectfully tell their peers, like, this is not okay. Like, you're the ones and block and do those different things because they're like, our reporting tools people weren't reporting as much. They just only wanted us to do something about it and they didn't want to do anything about it. We need to start respectfully calling it out.
I don't know if this is too overly broad a question, but it's interesting. You said you've had some young people working with your organization for 10 plus years. How have they shifted? Are they aware? Okay, we really see that these are money-making companies. Over the past couple of years, there was the whole thing about TikTok and China algorithms and so on. Did the young people who've been with your group for 10 years, have you seen their growing appreciation for the responsibility that we must all play, whether you're young or not so young?
Yeah, I think it's really neat. That's why a lot of times they will come work with us because again, they see and feel that there are problems. One of our interns, she's third year in college. She came to us because when she remembers when she was 9 years old, her brother was talking to somebody that was definitely a way older of a person, basically catfished as a 12-year-old, and the guy was asking him for his address and things like that. So she remembers that from when she was 9. So then becomes an intern with us. And so now as an old grown in college now, she's like really aware of her digital wellness and her digital footprint and having those conversations. And when they come work with us, they see those things even more and that they have that space to talk about it and they can help other people. I think that's the important part. And what's neat is we get a couple of them go work with the tech companies to work on policy and to continue those conversations as they move forward, which is really, that's what we want, is that we keep getting them to level up in our organization or past our organization from the experience they've gotten from their internship with us.
Great. That's wonderful. We know that cyberbullying continues to get headlines, Kim, but you said the deeper problem is digital literacy, giving children the capability to distinguish between what is real and what is manufactured. And Tom and I had a discussion a couple of weeks back with all the deep fakes that we're seeing on YouTube, and people are starting to get their news from fake images of George Will and Rachel Maddow. And
it almost seems, maybe again, it's just my perspective being my age or whatever, but it seems almost a recipe. Pick two celebrities, whether it's Kim Kardashian and Pam Bondi, and then a headline issue, and then weave them all together and have or Caroline Levitt in the press room of the White House or something. So when I see something like this, I'll look for other more established. Was this reported by the New York Times? No one else is reporting. And as Richard has pointed out to me, it's a bit deeper into the tech world than I am. It's great for clicks. People commenting, as some of my friends have 80-year-old musician friends. I don't know that really ever happened. I hate to tell you.
Yeah, our interns this year, they created a campaign, and it's called "Don't Take the Bait" because rage bait is alive and well.
Yeah.
It actually now is an Oxford dictionary, like official dictionary terminology, right? Because as you guys know, it was before AI was becoming a thing. It was just getting the headlines, like changing the headlines to get people's reactions, right? No matter if it's true or not, so that they'll go click because you make money off of every click, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that's why they created the "Don't Take the Bait" because they're like, now they're creating a video series where they're trying to get influencers that, hey, how do you make sure you're not taking the bait, like on that end? And who's getting sucked into the more the AI? I'll be honest with you, it's not the teens because they're been exposed now to the AI and they're seeing it.
Yep.
Yeah, who knows who's getting sucked in is our parents. Like our parents, the ones who believe the stories, right? And so we're trying to teach students to then go and educate their parents to not take the bait. Like it's not just getting the students to not take the bait, it's getting the students to go teach the parents. And I think that's the important part. And I honestly think what we need as a nation is we need to make a federal law. I don't know if you guys know, but the EU in Europe, they made a federal law, or they made a law over there where if you use AI as a company, you have to put it in your caption that
Yep.
AI was used. And I feel like there's so many news sources and like people are having a hard time if AI was even being used or not, or like it is. They have to really like kind of look at it now. I think that needs to be, we do need to make a federal law. And that is hard for us. I know we usually are great at making state laws, and I do know that I think Trump did put out there that they're working on a federal law around AI. It just hasn't been made yet.
Yeah.
So we're all waiting for that to happen because they all know AI is where money's at right now. And they're all figuring out who gets paid, I'm sure, and whatnot before they make that federal law.
Yeah. And there have been a lot of instances. There are some lawsuits out there as well that have been submitted by artists about people taking and stealing their work and royalties and things of that nature. But yeah, it definitely raises a great point. Is we don't even know when it's AI laced. I guess it is the term because AI can hallucinate. It can foster all kinds of misinformation just on its own, let alone in the hands of a bad agent. But I want to circle back, Kim, to the parents. How effective, in your view, is like parental controls? And are they effective? Should they be deployed? And how do parents fit in this partnership, maybe, is how I would envision it with the kids in that direction.
Mm. Yeah. It always starts off with conversations. If you remember teaching your kid how to read, it's really hard, right? If you remember having to teach them how to read, the only way you can do it is to literally sit side by side with them to really teach them how to read, right? There is no quick app that you can go do. You can't it's just a consistent daily routine, right? Before bed or whatever it might be. And same thing with these devices. You have to sit with them and talk them through. Hey, is this positive? Is this negative? Is this appropriate for our family? Is this inappropriate for our family? And those are the kind of conversations you have. Like you can monitor all you want, but just like every tool, there's gonna be things that they're smart because
Yes.
they're what do you call them? Digital natives. We're digital immigrants.
They're smarter than we are.
Yeah, and they're smarter than us on some things, but we're
Yes.
smarter than them on other things because we know when to put our phone away. Most adults do, but they again need to be taught. There's a lot of things that they still need to be taught on those things. Yes, I would hope parents at least know there's certain things you want to make on your Wi-Fi, block out porn sites. There's certain things you should be setting up. Even you can turn off AI from your web browser for routines. You have to go into each app. If your kid does have Discord or Snap or TikTok or Instagram, the unfortunate thing is you have to go in each of those apps to set up the parental controls on each of those maps. And there are apps you can get to be able to help that. We actually have a free resource if any parent needs it to have the checklist to go through. Here's the things that you should be at least doing. But then it also gives you discussion questions because again, you can have all the monitoring tools you have and they're going to be able to get around it. Just like I know I got away with things that my parents
Yeah.
never made. I'm a good kid, but there's things that I got away with, right?
Oh,
Yeah. So I just think that it's important for you to have discussions. And it's also you as an adult need to call yourself out on when you're doing things. Like you should weekly check your screen time with your kids. And have that conversation. What is it that I need to change? Is there anything that I need to delete off my phone or any patterns I need to change? Because there is a game on my phone right now that I know I'm addicted to, but it's my where I go to like de-stress. And is there time where I go and delete it for a week? Yeah. And so there is chances that I have that conversation with students and then they go, "Oh yeah, there's been times I had to delete apps." So like we normalize that kind of process as well because you've got to get them to be where they can self-monitor, that they can self-monitor
Yeah.
themselves on where they're at.
Sure. Oh, we have about a minute or two left. Tom, any last questions? Otherwise,
Yeah, I do have one last question, and then I'd love for you to tell everybody how they can learn more about your organization and support the work that you do and so on. But as we were having this conversation, I was just thinking that although clearly it's important for the parents to get involved, like so many things over the ages, but I would think it's especially important for young people to support or call out one another. I spend probably too much time on social media, including TikTok. I'm now in South Florida, so there's a lot of like spring break rave videos or EDM concerts or whatever, probably stuff like, Tom, why are you even watching this? But there seems to be a little bit of cruelty, if I may say. Like bullying has always existed, and young people can be mean to one another.
Yeah.
Young people, especially young women, can be self-conscious about body image, and again, cruelty can enter into that. But I see some like young guys boasting about their dating lives, and like perhaps young people leaning on one another because it's not on the parents' radar screen. Maybe that can be a solution to this. I wish that people were not treating one another this way.
Yeah, 100%. And first off, let's just talk about your feed. I love that you've got this like young hip feed going on in your TikTok, right? Because that's how your algorithm is based off what you watch and whatever else. And I think it is important to make sure your feed isn't just all the stuff that you want to see. I think it's good to be able to go see what other people are seeing so that you can understand them, right? When you have conversations. I think that's what's the important part too. But yes, the biggest thing I will tell you though about cyberbullying is a lot of times people don't know they are being a bully. When we first made this nonprofit, I never used the word bully because it was so overused. This is back in 2011 when I first started talking about it, right? Like 2011, it was all these anti-bullying campaigns were going around, and it just was like, you can use that word all you want, but most time people don't know. They all think they're being funny. Like when you go back to it and they're doing research, so like every single kid's, "Oh, I was just joking." That's our humor nowadays is very dark humor with
yes.
teen. And I think it's because of how it's on movies and it's how adult humor is even in Disney movies now, right? So it's all there. And so it's a societal like change. And a lot of times people don't know they're bullying. They really just think they're just being fun and funny. And so that's why we're trying to teach them of like, when is it fun and funny? When does it cross the line of being inappropriate, rude, and cruel? And that's why we're trying to teach them how to respectfully call that out, be those digital first responders to say, "Hey, this has definitely crossed that line," and have that part. Because most times teenagers don't, even adults don't want to say anything because you feel like you're being a snitch. And we're not being a snitch. You're asking for help. You're asking for help to change how we're treating people. You train people how you be treated by how you treat others. And I think that's
Right.
to remember on.
Awesome. Tell us where we can find you online. I know icanhelp.net is one of the places.
Yeah.
And
And we were called I Can Help, and then all the tech companies kept asking us, "What do you help with?" We kept saying we make digital for good. So you can look at us up at icanhelp.net, digitalforgood.net. All of our socials are called I Can Help Official. We're looking for people to come help us. This is a huge problem. Social media is a huge beast. And so how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? Like the saying goes. We have a Digital for Good Summit coming up. We're hoping to have it in September is our goal. That's where we bring all the tech company and students and schools and partners that want to come and talk about how can you make digital for good. We bring them together to be able to have that. And then we spotlight students who are doing amazing work. I was telling Richard a story because one of our change makers last year was an autistic girl, and she makes slime. And so while she was there pitching her project of her amazing project that she has, that she uses her social media to sell her slime, TikTok Live is in the audience, and TikTok Live teamed her up with some influencers who are now promoting her slime. One of the influencers is a person who does reviews on candy and toys. So millions of followers, and now is supporting one of our change makers to get her project out there and showcase that we can use digital for good. So we're looking for people to come, even mentors. My PR team needs mentors because we need to figure out how can we get more in the news, right? So
I'll
come
definitely
think of
touch
a like official.
I'd love to mentorship program. time permitting, I had wanted to ask you about that, but I'll do that offline. And you were gracious enough to ask me about, I have a 19-year-old daughter on the spectrum. She goes to art school and she's looking for an internship. And I think this might be something that would really percolate with her. So I appreciate that. And that goes for anyone out there listening. If you have a socially responsible daughter or son that really wants to become part of a movement that's really going to change the lives in a positive way, Kim and her organizations is the place to be.
Yes, everybody can help. The question is, will you? So come on, come help.
Thanks, Will. Well, thank you so much. This is really very timely. It's fun of me and my PR
Yes.
work up talking about what makes an effective press release. It's newsworthy, it's timely, it cares about others, it's being of service, and we're doing all of that in a very important field. Bravo to you and your
Yay,
team.
thank you.
I hope more people learn more about what you do because it's really terrific.
Yes, and I consider it God's work, Kim. So I know there's a divine direction backing you on this exquisite work that you do. So thank you so much for appearing here with us today. It's really been a special time. So
Yeah.
great to see you. And let's keep in touch because we are interested in your upcoming event. I'm very active in social with my Autism Foundation and local community. And that's a particularly hard hit group and sometimes vulnerable group that you serve. And it's just a blessing.
Yeah. We were supposed to be out in New York for a Good for Good Summit, and our event space had to pull out last minute. So we usually have it in February, but we're now having to move it. So if you know anybody that wants to host us
Let's stay in
New
touch
York,
offline because, yeah,
Yeah.
I've done events in the past and perhaps we can give you a hand there. Be my
cool.
pleasure.
Love it.
Sounds great.
Great.
Thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for a
Thank
great
you.
conversation. Stay awesome.
Take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye, Kim.
Thanks, Tom.
All righty.
It's important work that Kim and her team are doing. I enjoyed hearing all about that.
Absolutely. And I love the approach, working to educate students around holding themselves accountable and creating good habits and good use of these platforms as opposed to simply lambasting them and whatnot. And there's plenty of people, I guess, out there that do that. So, yeah, God's work. So we're going to wrap up.
I think I've probably told you, I think we both love humor, and I often talk about this New Yorker cartoon that I saw a few months ago where the dad is holding out the little spoon of soft applesauce or something, and the baby said, after we introduce solids, I have some computer stuff I need some help with. You know, our future is in the hands of the young people. That's clear.
It truly is. When I watch my daughter navigate on her smartphone, and it can be any app where I'm struggling to find something that's 3-4 menu levels down, she just Dad, let me have your phone. She finds it in 10 seconds. It's done. Or I'm sitting there driving along. Oh man, we need gas. So 2 seconds later, she opens the gas app and I've got 10 options close by to deal with. The digital literacy they have certainly is well beyond most of us adults, but with that comes a big responsibility. All right, so let's move to our last area, which is the 5 news stories of the week where there was some lack of consistency in the reporting. And the first was we spent a fair amount of time talking about the Meta and YouTube decisions, the heavy fines in the hundreds of millions. Now, Meta and Google kind of frame these verdicts as outliers and that they plan to appeal. And platforms claim existing safety measures are robust. And Mark Zuckerberg says his company works hard to keep people safe. The courts didn't seem to feel that way. We'll have to see where that ends up.
Yeah, I think I know you do a lot of work with attorneys and technology. I think the real risk here is setting a precedent, as they say.
Yeah.
One analyst I heard on CNN said $300 million might sound like a lot of money. And pretty soon you're talking real numbers. However, he said that might be a signing bonus for a top-tier
AI engineer that Meta stole from OpenAI or something. You're right. But it's a symbolic gesture. The fact that they lost in court and the fact that it got visibility and finally some level of accountability was exercised. That's the key piece for sure.
Yeah.
So the second story was about 2 teens in Pennsylvania who were convicted on 59 felony counts and got probation for hundreds of deepfake nude images of classmates. So the defense calls it a case of very interesting underlying legal issues. And a case may be expunged in a couple of years. So they framed the whole thing as juvenile rehabilitation. Whereas the fact is, these two 14-year-old boys knew what they were doing, using yearbook photos and posting them all over Instagram, TikTok. And then the same week, 3 Tennessee teens sued Elon Musk's XAI for identical conduct. And so that's this whole, as we talked with Kim about, this whole area of teen porn is really a raging issue. Next.
Within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a chance to bring on my friend Shelley Ross, who is my executive producer at Good Morning America. She got her start a couple of decades ago producing a documentary about the Menendez brothers. And when they came they commuted their 30 life sentences commuted after 40 years. She said, no, I don't think they should be. At what point does a young person have enough knowledge like this behavior impacts others and hurts others? And as terrible as we might think an extreme sentence might be, in some cases, it might be appropriate.
Yeah. Premeditation infers a higher level of intelligence. It's one thing if it was a random act or a spontaneous act, but this wasn't in the Menendez brothers case. It was premeditated. They showed careful planning. It doesn't matter if they were whatever the age they were. No, I think we have to draw the line somewhere. So the next story was about in the U.S.-Iran war, which continues to go on, and in spite of the kind of unfocused updates that we get from the Trump administration on when it's going to end, how it's going to end, what is the definition of victory. We've seen a little bit of a digression now we talked about this before. What is the definition of victory for Israel versus the U.S. and how that digression may soon play out a little bit further. But there was a 2,000-pound bunker buster strike in Isfahan, one of the towns, and I believe that was targeted. They were supposed to have been targeted military access, an ammunition depot, and the Pentagon's blustering position of that was a message of strength, when it's really more of the way this war has played out, more in an area of ego and bravado and masculinity versus a tactical perspective. So an interesting thing. And I know you followed the war too.
I think we were both rather young kids when the Vietnam War was at its height or being resolved after all those years, the toll that it took on so many young people and families. But I think that during that war, if we could call this a war rather than what is called an excursion or an expedition or something, it's a war as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That by controlling press access and information and changing stories about reasons, I understand the risk of a nuclear weapon. God forbid, certainly. But by sowing so much confusion and misstatements and double talk and competing definitions of what's really going on, it really does leave the American public with great uncertainty and anxiety. I think it should not be that way, basically.
And it should, because again, we've mentioned numerous times that Ali Khamenei, the former supreme leader there, issued 2 fatwas against the use of nuclear weapons by Iran. So that's punishable by death. So Iran had no intention of deploying their nuclear weapons, in spite of what the rhetoric may be. And unfortunately, by killing him, his much more militant son is now the supreme leader who is more likely to use nuclear weapons. So the exact opposite result ended up happening in this particular case. So let's move on to another controversial area in terms of reporting, and that's the birthright citizenship ban. Many people thought it was very unusual for President Trump himself to attend the Supreme Court hearing, which was, one could argue, was he there out of curiosity? Was he there out of making a statement or wanton intimidation or visibility?
My pick was that Robert De Niro and Meet the Fockers.
Yes.
Like he has the three justices on the panel. Of course, you're going to back me up, aren't you? I don't know that they are.
Yeah. No, and Trump left after the testimony kind of went in a direction that seemed to indicate it was not to his liking, that there's a 14th Amendment guarantee that was conspicuously absent from any of the administrative framing, which is if you're born in this country, even to illegal parents or immigrants or even people on a visit from a foreign country, there is a birthright citizenship. And it is a constitutional right. That's something that did not go, at least now we don't know I think the actual Supreme Court delivery of its ruling won't be till June, but I think we got a foretelling of where it's headed. And then finally, Pete Hegseth reinstates pilots who buzzed Kid Rock's estate, calling it the bro culture at the command level. And I know Kid Rock has mentioned that he is personal friends with the president. And
Wasn't he your favorite musician? The guy is supremely talented, you must admit.
he surely is. The ratings he got going up against the Super Bowl Bad Bunny program speaks for itself. But active duty aircraft used to hover over a private celebrity's estate during a training run. There were suspensions that were issued by the DOD because it's just clearly inappropriate. And is that comparable to Kash Patel doing shots with the American Olympic hockey team in the Winter Olympics? It's a pattern here of government resources being deployed for partisan pageantry is really what this comes down to, if you really want to look at the way this really frames out.
Speaking of pageantry, we haven't even gotten into Kristi Noem's husband. Oh, no.
And of course, the news of the week that Pam Bondi was fired by Donald Trump. And again, most of the characteristics around what the criteria is to lose one's job under Donald Trump is either A, you don't do a good enough job following his orders to the letter, no matter how questionable they may or may not be, or B, what you do or don't do embarrasses the president. And that's a big one. Pam Bondi was unable to bury the Epstein files and handle that and manage that, as well as her inability to execute prosecutions of certain people like Jim Comey, former FBI director Jim Comey, and the New York State District Attorney Tisha James. So, of course, both of those were kicked out of court by the judges as being frivolous and just a ridiculous waste of time, but that never stopped the Trump administration. We know they lost 60 out of 61 of those cases under the auspices of Rudy Giuliani trying to invoke or find issues of tampering of the 2020 election.
President Trump has loyally stood by Rudy Giuliani for being such an outspoken, he just kicked him to the curb, I guess.
Yeah, he really did, which is, again, it's tough working for an organization like that doesn't have your back. But I have your back. I know you have my back. And it's been an interesting week. So, again, thanks for tuning in today. I'm Richard Schreiber.
Tom Martin here, and I'm grateful that my friend Kim, we met through a coaching group online. As a matter of, so there are good things that can happen online. I thought that her tools in terms of source verification, emotional audit, cross-referencing are what broadcast journalism school taught as far as the truth. Yes. What we're really dedicated to here. That's what we're mission here. The fairness doctrine required it of us. And now someone is teaching it to 12-year-olds and talk about young people holding one another accountable. I'm encouraged.
I'm incredibly encouraged by the wonderful work that Kim does, because you're right, Tom. The key operative there is accountability. It's missing amongst us adults, for sure. Not all of us, of course, but among much of what the media seems to reinforce is that it's in short supply, certainly of our politicians and public figures. But starting with young people, if we can impress upon them to take accountability for how they view things in social media, how they react to each other, I think builds a foundation for a future generation that hopefully will be better than this one in that respect. So,
and even during, we often refer to the iconic Edward R. Murrow, but even during Edward R. Murrow's McCarthy era, people were worried about the future and about people taking a stand for integrity and not shirking their responsibility. We were able to move through that challenging time, and would like to think that we're going to move through this as well.
No, I have faith that we will, Tom, especially with thanks to people like Kim Carr. I get to say good night and good luck. the famed Edward R. Murrow line every week. So have a blessed week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. It's great being with y'all.
Take care.